If I have the timeline right, I think you joined Monday.com like 4 months before its IPO. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is, it's unbelievable because in February, I'm going to be 4 years in Monday. So I joined Monday in mid-February. I was literally brought to a room. I was in an interview 10 days before I joined. So 10 days of interviews. I didn't even know the company. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the story, nothing. I was brought into a room and people around me, there were many people. On the screens there were Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and others that were on the IPO, and they said, "It's yours." And I'm like looking left and right, and I'm saying, "Okay, it's mine."
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
This was a bucket list interview for your boy. I interviewed the CFO of Monday.com, Eliran Glazer. And all the CFOs that come on the podcast, they seem to say that the number one skill you should have is to be a great storyteller. This guy is he's the cream of the crop when it comes to storytelling. We go deep on how to be a great storyteller as a CFO, and he weaves it into the story of their IPO. He joined just 4 months before they rang the bell. He takes us through that whirlwind of going through the roadshow, getting the company ready, and launching as a publicly traded company in the US. We also touch on what makes the Israeli tech scene so special. I always joke that Israel's number one export is tech companies. Eliran is the type of guy that's full of energy. He made me want to run through a wall. And you're going to enjoy this and learn a lot about how storytelling can supercharge your skill set as a finance leader. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Here's a question. Do you feel like you're wasting time and energy on contract renewals or tracking shadow IT spend or, this is a bad one, explaining rising software costs to the board? Truth is, traditional spend management is broken. That's where Tropic comes in. Tropic is an intelligent spend management solution that consolidates your spend data and processes into one unified offering, enabling insights and decisive action. It doesn't just show you where the problems are, it helps you solve them. From spotting hidden optimization opportunities like duplicative spend to automating those painful procurement workflows to giving you the best market data that turns every vendor negotiation in your favor. I'm a Tropic customer myself. I've been using them for over a year and I love their price checks. They allow me to see if I'm getting a fair market deal instantly. And I'm proud to say that I am no longer using my email as our company's contract repository. I've got every document and renewal neatly organized in my Tropic portal. Isn't it time to turn spend management into your competitive advantage? Visit tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics to see what's possible when intelligence drives your decisions. tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics. Trust isn't earned, it's demanded. Whether you're a startup founder navigating your first audit or a seasoned security professional scaling your GRC program, proving your commitment to security has never been more critical or complex. That's where Vanta comes in. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks, like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. Centralized security workflows, complete questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Vanta not only saves you time, it can also save you money. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits, and the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. Join over 9,000 global companies like Atlassian, Cora, and Factory, who use Vanta to manage risk and improve security in real time. For a limited time, our audience gets $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/metrics. That's vanta.com/metrics for $1,000 off. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you, CJ. I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me.
So I've been a big fan of Monday for a long time. So much so that whenever I share the company with people, I always say Monday.com and then it ends up hyperlinking it, which I think is like such a great way to have a name. Can you tell me the story behind Monday.com's name? Because it's pretty unique.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the short version because there is a long version of it. So I don't know if you know Roy and Eran, the Monday.com founders and co-CEOs. They have a podcast in Israel called Startup for Startup. in which they share, in Hebrew, by the way, they share their knowledge and expertise with the founders in Israel, with the community of investors and entrepreneurs. But anyway, the short story is Monday was founded in 2012. The first name was The Pulse. Now, why The Pulse? Because pulse, obviously heartbeat. So, we want to make sure that things are going in accordance. But what happened that they realized that, first of all, it's not a memorable name. People don't remember The Pulse. And second, they only checked with Israeli people. They really didn't really check with, Native Americans or Europeans. So that Pulse seemed like, Roy said in the podcast, he said, it may be, when you sound illiterate, that Pulse, so they felt uncomfortable with it. And they told me that the customers really didn't like it. So in 2017, they decided to change the name. One of the investors named Johnny told them, what about Monday or Monday.com? Because not the day in the week, but a Monday.com name. They said, okay. Then they started the process in buying the domain name. But what happened is they went to a broker, domain broker. They bought the name, but it was stolen. So after 2 weeks, when they bought the name, they said it on the podcast, they paid $50,000. They got a lawsuit 2 weeks later, a letter saying, guys, the name was stolen from me. So after they bought the name, 2.5, weeks later, a lawsuit, they went into the original owner of the name. For a year and a half, they had been in a process with him. He lived in San Francisco. They went to him. They said, we want to buy the name. They started litigation and everything, and they got the name. Took them a year and a half. And they were they had a conviction about the name. But what is the nice kind of happy end of this story is when they went to him, to San Francisco. They bought the name after it was returned to him. They said, we will pay you the money, but you know what? We'll give you extra 25,000 shares of Monday. Because in 10 years, when Monday.com is going to be a big company, we want you to have the upside. They didn't have to do it. They insisted on it. He got the shares, and good story to have.
That's a crazy story. Yeah. Buying domain names is always kind of a sketchy world. At my last company, we also paid an amount similar for a domain name, and it was off of like someone in South Korea, and we were like, is this going to be legit or not? The story though reminds me of, and this is like in startup folklore, of Mark Zuckerberg paying some guy to paint a mural in the office with early Facebook shares, and it ended up being worth like $100 million later.
Yeah. I think the guy, they brought like an artist who did the graffiti on the walls, and they couldn't pay him, so they gave him shares, and it was like a big story. Facebook at the time was the most, the highest ever IPO for a private company.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good story to have.
Yeah. And what was it, named Monday.com with the idea that, hey, that's like the first day of the work week. That's how you start off.
Yeah. So they wanted, so in the market, Monday is about work management. So we want to make sure that when you come to work, on Monday, and, it's always like the first day of the week, people feel like, after the weekend. So we want to make it fun for you. We want to make sure that when you come to work, you have all this fun, you have this fun software and building blocks and Monday capabilities. So this was the idea. But by the way, they insisted on Monday.com because they didn't want Monday to be like people say, I logged on Monday. Is it Monday the software or Monday the day? So they insisted on Monday.com.
I thought it was like a stealth marketing ploy of like Bill.com does it as well. So it ends up getting shared and you can click to see what it is very easily when people text or email it to you.
Yeah. It's even like Box, Box.com. Even Apple started as Apple.com and then they became Apple. So over time, we are now Monday. But at the time of the rebranding and everything, we wanted to make sure that people don't get confused.
Eliran, this is striking me now. The company is Israeli. Is it kind of ironic to you, though, that the first work day of the week is actually Sunday?
It's actually interesting. But, because Monday, obviously, I would say more than 95% of the customers are always outside of Israel, then you would want to make sure that they will understand it. So for the Israeli ones, it was less kind of important, I would say.
If you name it Sunday.com, it may be pricier. I don't know. And people may not work as hard.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Israel for a bit. What do you think makes Israel's tech scene so special?
So it's a combination of few things. First of all, Israel is a country of immigrants. And there is always like, I don't want to say survival mode, but it's always like you have to be creative in order to, when you immigrate to a new country, you find a new job. So Israel back in 1948 was, founded as a country. And then people are very entrepreneurs by nature. There is a lot of entrepreneurship that people have in order to kind of reinvent all kind of things that will make Israel unique. I will explain why. We are the only country in the Middle East that is surrounded by mostly Muslim Arab countries. And as part of the, I would say, existence of Israel, you had to be creative. You're only few million people in terms of population, and people wanted to be very creative in order to make sure that we can handle all the potential threats that surrounded us. So it's a combination of army. You have, intelligence units in the army that are doing cyber, that are doing intelligence, and they are becoming, very innovative in the way they develop things. They are thinking, beyond imagination about all kinds of things. And many of the young people who joined the army and was part of these platoons, some of them, I will just name them, 8200, this is one thing, 8100 is another thing, or 81 actually. They came out with all these crazy ideas, and once they did few things in the army, like think about Checkpoint, the Israeli company, think about Waze, think about Wiz, the cyber company. They came with all this idea. They saw entrepreneurship. They gained a lot of experience through very unique training, and they study all kinds of unique things. They come out of the army and they are becoming entrepreneurs of startups. So this is one thing. As I said, the culture, many young people, there are a lot of youngsters in Israel, in average family, 3-4 kids. There is a lot of innovation. There is a lot of excitement. So it creates a culture of being, again, thinking outside of the box, thinking, how can I make a difference? And the last thing I would say, I don't know how to relate to it. People say the Israeli chutzpah, but I want to say, like, you are very outgoing in the way you have a problem. Let's deal with the problem. How can we solve the problem? Let's think outside of the box. It comes with a certain toll, because you want to do things quickly and you want to kind of have all these, quick solutions. But this is creating an environment of entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity that is very unique in Israel.
I worked at a cybersecurity company called Sneak, and after meeting a lot of the people there, who many of the founders, including Guy Pajarni, came from a similar military unit where they all met each other, and then they created a cybersecurity company after. But I would joke that Israel's number one export is startups, more specifically cybersecurity companies.
Yeah, you would be surprised, but there is something very interesting in Israel. Technology and national security have been tightly bound in Israel, since 1948. And, it's a must-have for Israel. I mean, we have to do it. And the Israeli tech ecosystem, just by way of statistics, I know you like statistics and KPIs, it's the second largest behind the Silicon Valley in terms of, companies per quota or per people, because there is a lot of companies that are being founded and built in Israel with a relatively small population. And 14%, as of the end of 2023, 14% of total jobs and a fifth of the country GDP is related to high tech.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I was talking to the founder of Ledge, their finance automation tool. We've done some events and the like together. And the founder was describing to me that there's an entrepreneurial attitude that's more risk on, it feels like, in Israel. Like in the US, working for a startup feels like a risky thing to say to your parents. Instead of, I remember my dad, he wanted me to go and, work at PwC and become an accounting partner there. I didn't even know that like working in tech and being a finance person to help tech companies was like a thing. In Israel, it seems like you come out of college or the army and it's just kind of, it's very normal. It's very expected.
Yeah, imagine you have like 18, 19-year-old. My son now, my youngest son is 16. He's joined the army and he's going to join the army in 2.5 years. So imagine you have like 18, 19-year-old boy who is now going into the army. And after doing a training of 6 months, he's becoming a commander of 20 soldiers, and he has to make decisions. And,
Wow.
There are all kinds of things that he needs to do in order to be a commander. It's about self-confidence. It's about the ability to manage people in crisis. And this is something that resonates with you. And even when you go or release from the army, you're able to kind of do it in the private sector, in being like, as part of companies that you build or join. So it's quite unique.
And you've also credited your time as an expat within the U.S. as shaping your perspective as a CFO. Well, what stuck with you about that experience?
Yeah, so I traveled to the U.S. with my family at the time, my wife and 2 daughters. My son was born in the U.S. in 2006, and I've been there for 4 years until 2010. I was the CFO of a company called Trayana at the time in the financial sector. And, throughout my time there, we were bought by a FTSE 100 company called ICAP, which was an interdealer broker based in London. And throughout this time, there was the subprime crisis in the US. And you wake up one morning, and it started, I believe, with Bear Stearns falling, and then Lehman Brothers, and the sky is falling. And you look around you, and the world is getting crazy. And I remember the weekend where Warren Buffett actually bailed out Goldman Sachs and later made a fortune, and they were speaking about Morgan Stanley. So what it made me understand is how to deal with crisis. So I was a CFO for a financial sector company. All of its customers part of them were the big banks, part of them were hedge funds and asset managers. And you are now becoming from a CFO who is working with the executive team, you're now coming to the front seat, and you have to manage the board, you have to manage the financials, you have to manage cash, because you don't know if you're going to have access to capital. You don't know if you're going to have cash available for you from your customers, because some of them potentially going out of business. Some of them are being in a very difficult situation. How you manage this, how you speak the language that will ease the employees also, because people are looking at you as a CFO and saying, what's going on? So I think it provides you with perspective. It provides you with the ability to be resilient, because you have to be resilient. Bear in mind that until then, people didn't really see a lot of crisis. Even from then until COVID, it was relatively a bull market for a long time. And in the US, to be fair, you work with investment bankers, you see a much bigger scale in terms of the companies, you go to conferences. So I think everything is much bigger. What you learn is to build business models, how to present them, how to even present presentations. So all of these things, I think, helped me in my career to get to the next level.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Does your revenue recognition process feel like a total guessing game? Step right up and pick a card, any card. You're not alone. Revenue accounting is getting more complex, especially with subscription models, usage-based billing, and evolving compliance standards. Woohoo! RightRev is here to help you gain control over your revenue accounting. RightRev automates the revenue recognition process from end to end. Whether it's multi-element arrangements, subscription renewals, or complex usage-based contracts, RightRev takes care of it all. That means fewer spreadsheets, fewer errors, and more time for your team to focus on growth. Customers like Snowflake, Logic Monitor, and Epicor chose RightRev to manage their high volume and complex revenue accounting. CFOs can see the bigger picture faster without being held up by their team's reporting nightmares. You know me, I'm a business model fanatic. And don't get me wrong, I love all the evolutions. We've got self-serve revenue, usage-based revenue, and now even success-based revenue, you name it. But that doesn't make it any easier for us bean counters on the back end to keep score. RightRev is like a cheat code for staying ahead of revenue complexities. So you're ready to transform your revenue accounting? Visit RightRev.com to schedule a demo. That's RightRev.com, and tell them your boy CJ sent. RightRev, modern revenue recognition simplified. Oh yeah. Listen, being a CFO, it's not always that glamorous. Sometimes I find myself watering the plants and taking out the garbage in the office. And, the best CFOs I know they're true business leaders. They know how to drive growth in heroic fashion. Unfortunately, the status quo of finance makes that really hard because day to day, we're mostly up to our eyeballs in spreadsheets and receipts. Thankfully, there's a financial provider who has built a solution to match your ambition, Brex. Brex designed a modern corporate card and spend platform that controls spend proactively and automates tedious expense and accounting tasks. Brex frees up CFOs to focus on the high-impact projects that drive growth. The shit that's actually worth your CFO time. So how does Brex work? You can embed your expense policy inside the corporate card to prevent out-of-policy spend before it happens. Receipts and memos are auto-generated, so you always have what you need to close the books fast. Managers get freed up from reviewing, every possible expense under the sun because in-policy expenses are auto-approved, and AI will flag any exceptions. And all the while, your expense detail is syncing with your ERP because Brex integrates with almost all of them. I love that, from QuickBooks to NetSuite. It's your time to shine as the strategic growth driver you are, and Brex can make it easy. More than 30,000 companies like DoorDash, Coinbase, and SeatGeek use Brex to make every dollar and every minute count. Join them at brex.com/metrics. That's brex.com/metrics. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report with accuracy? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built solutions for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks with minimal IT involvement, enabling seamless collaboration across your organization's key financial workflows. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unmatched scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Visit planful.com/metrics to see how you can elevate your team this year with Planful. They will hook you up. It is planful.com/metrics. Tell them your boy CJ sent you. Planful.com/metrics. It sounds like that was a true wartime CFO moment. And I think those can come about for a number of reasons. What you mentioned is kind of the collapse of the economy, but you kind of also have to go into that mindset when you're preparing for a big event in a short period of time. And if I have the timeline right, I think you joined Monday.com like 4 months before its IPO. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is, it's unbelievable because in February, I'm going to be 4 years in Monday. So I joined Monday in mid-February. I was literally brought to a room. I was in interview 10 days before I joined. So 10 days of interviews. I didn't even know the company. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the story, nothing. I was brought into a room and people around me, there were many people. On the screens, there were Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and others that were on the IPO. And they said, it's yours. And I'm like looking left and right and I'm saying, okay, it's mine. I have to do. Now I have to learn about the business model. I have to get ready to the testing the water number 1, which happened 3 weeks later. I have to get to know the founders in a more intimate way because I just interviewed with them. I don't know them. I have to be able to speak with the analysts, speak with the investors, and to have a family. So what I did is basically told my wife and kids, see you in 6 months. And I said, I'm ready for it and bring it on. And it was a successful IPO, but I can remember. So I listened to podcasts. I read a lot of prospectus, and going back in 2006, 2010 in the US, being resilient, making decisions, being able to deal with pressure, I was ready.
Yeah, it sounds like you were kind of forged in that crucible of pressure in the 2008 timeframe, and that helped. That helped you, I think, synthesize. You're drinking from a fire hose, trying to understand the company, trying to understand the space you played in. So that's incredible.
Thank you.
What do you think aged you the most during that process?
So I still have my hair.
Yeah, you still got good hair.
Yeah, and people tell me that I don't have enough white hair. I say, I don't know why. Maybe it's genes. Maybe it's the fact that I'm being I try to be at least not to keep things, inside. I try to be very outgoing. What aged me most? It's interesting. I think, I will go back to that. Being Israeli, when you go, this was my first time IPO. I never did an IPO before that. So I have to do an IPO. I have to speak with investors and analysts the first time of my life in a way that I'm telling the Monday story. I was under pressure, maybe I didn't show it at the time, but I said, I need to tell a good story. Storytelling for a company that is going public. And now to remind you, CJ, that at the time, everyone went public. So you kind of had the competition for the attention of the analysts and the investors, because at the time, so many companies, middle 2021, a huge IPO sessions all around the world. And, this is something that I remember getting ready to my first investor or analyst day, presenting to everyone and telling the Monday story when I just joined 3 weeks ago. It was, this aged me most.
Do you remember where you were or what was going through your head at the time, like that 10 seconds before you started to present?
Yeah, I was in a room and there were a lot of people, on screen. It was also a Zoom time. If you remember, this was just before.
Oh yeah, it was over Zoom.
Yeah, over Zoom. So you have to do the analyst. And I'm in a room. There are many people around me and everybody's in silent. And I see all these names and all these analysts and analysts and bankers on the screen. And 10 seconds before that, I tell myself, so, what I usually do. So I do breathing. I do all kinds of techniques. And as a young, when I did my interviews back when I was young, I used to listen to a Queen song called "We Are the Champion," the Champion. And then it helped me relax. So I said, get ready. I kind of thanked it to myself in my heart. Said, you know what? You're going to be fine. And whatever happens, you know better than them. You know what they don't know about Monday. So just tell the story and pray to God that it will be okay. This was it.
I'm really glad I asked you that. That's amazing. That's amazing. Getting inside the head of somebody. It's like an athlete ready to go out on the big stage. So thank you for sharing that. You had mentioned something about competing for, I guess, airtime, mind share. When it's a crowded market, people's attention can only go in so many places. We recently spoke to Amanda Whalen, who took Klaviyo public, and we spoke to Bill Kofed, who took OneStream public, and both of them went in times when there really wasn't much going on. And that is an asset in and of itself in a different way, that like there's less going on so people can pay attention to you. You kind of had the reverse of that, where you have to stick out in a crowded market.
Yeah. By the way, I heard your interview with Amanda, which was really interesting. It was really good. And I took some lessons from there as well, just to get to know better. And I read your posts on LinkedIn, always interesting. You have to make sure that you differentiate yourself, because you come to this audience of analysts and investors and you tell a story, and they can say in their heart, okay, what's in it for me? Why should I listen to that? Now I'm listening to, 15 IPOs, how Monday is unique. So this is the differentiation. How do you differentiate yourself in the storytelling? And I will tell you one thing that was stood for us, as a good thing. We insisted on our story. So when you do this, there is like almost a cookie cutter where where the investors and the bankers tells you, you need to tell the story this way. And you need to make sure, because you aiming or you targeting a certain scenario of, potentially perfecting your IPO price, or making sure that you will get the best attention. So it's very easy to go into this path. But I can tell you about Roy and Eran, the co-founders and co-CEOs of Monday, that they had a strong conviction on their story, on the Monday story. This is how we want to tell our story. This is how we believe that we should tell the story. And this is what we did. And we were very authentic in a way that kind of reassured us that we are doing the right thing. And I think this created a certain uniqueness, and we got the attention of investors who are actually telling us, you know what, it's a good story to tell. And the fact that you are passionate about it and you have conviction is something that, resonate to us. And it's interesting for us to even listen for more.
That's so spot on, because like there is a playbook to some degree of success that they want, and they also want to put you in a box, right? So you're
Correct.
Easier to analyze, right? Because if you come out of left field and you look completely different than everything else, even if you're stellar, it's like, well, now it's making my job hard to figure out if this is good or not. But I think what you're saying rings true. There was a semblance of authenticity that resonated with people.
Correct. One of the maybe one of the biggest compliments, as a CFO, many consider to be like not maybe the bean counters or the people who crunch like a numbers crunch person. It used to be in the past. And I think the ability to be a people person is something that is becoming very important for a CFO. And one of them, I would say, most humbly, the biggest compliments that I got from an investor who left the fund to be independent, he founded his own hedge fund. He said, one of the things that stood for you is when we spoke with you, we felt like you are seeing the person behind the conversation and you are trying to be authentic to an extent, because you cannot say anything. And you're passionate about it and you don't fake it. There is a lot of things like you fake it until you make it. And there is like, you have to say all the things, the right things. I don't want to give credit to myself, but I try to be as authentic as I can with the limitations of a CFO of a public company. And even when you go on a call and you ask the analyst, last time you spoke with him and he took his daughter to the college, and you ask him in the following call, hey, how was your college trip with your daughter? They remember this. They appreciate this because you create this bond between you and them. And, when things going well, all great. But when you have some challenges, potentially you hope that people will appreciate the fact that to a certain extent you were authentic with them.
And I think that goes a long way with building a long-term relationship, because they want to invest in people that they know they can count on, and people that they truly believe in. They don't want to invest in this idea of a CFO. I have this theory that I've said before, that I feel like every CFO has a favorite Taylor Swift song. It's just like your job to figure out what it is. But like, how do you get to who a CFO is at their core?
I think that it goes back to the things that I said. I mean, I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts, for example. I'm a curious person. And one of the things for me that is always interesting for me is like, even when I go on LinkedIn, I see all these, people I follow, and yourself and others. And I read all these things, and I look at the nuances that interesting for me. Like, I understood that in order to be a good CFO, other than just getting to know the numbers good and making sure that you will be well prepared, I'm always preparing for anything, for every call. If this is earnings or even the podcast with you or any other podcast, you want to be professional. But I think one of the most important things is be able to tell a story. And if you can tell a story that is, the numbers can be only part of the story. Tell a story, be able to understand the business, be able to, if someone asks you about Monday or about the competitors of Monday, you need to be able to tell their story as well. You need to be able to say, if, Smartsheet was bought by a company, you need to be able, if someone asks you, what about your competitor that has been bought? You need to know about it. So it's a combination of few things, curiosity, learn, educate yourself. Don't be shy to educate yourself. I even took few lessons in English back at the time just to improve. There are things that people in Israel not always know. Ballpark. I'm in the first inning. These are things that for me, they are new, but you have to know them. You have to understand the jargon. So you have to educate yourself and get better all the time.
I love that. And I truly agree that showing your personality, that's a competitive moat over time. Hey, I wanted to ask you about storytelling, because sometimes, and this is me selfishly asking for advice, when I tell my company's story, I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over again. And I'm like, CJ, don't go into robot mode here. Like, stay lively here and keep telling the story. Do you ever feel like you're repeating yourself?
Of course. I mean, you many times. Like, I came from investor meetings yesterday and the day before the analyst, because we had our earnings, and there is a lot of things. I met with Israeli investors, so you keep saying the story again and again. The way to sometimes deal with it is to potentially understand your audience. And sometimes you kind of do small things. Like, if you speak, I will give you an example. If you speak with analysts, you will probably speak about the modeling. They will ask you about, your forecast. If you speak about investors, with investors, they will ask you about the exciting new innovation kind of product or solutions that you have. So you need to know your audience in a way, and maybe do you can't always do it, but some small tweaks. Early in my career, back in 2000, I took a one-day lesson, and it's still, I still remember it, about presentations. And the guy there told me, you need to remember CPA from the world of life-saving. Content, presenter, audience. Make sure if you present to salespeople, speak about commission. If you speak with developers, speak about innovation. Speak about things that will resonate with them, because they will come to the presentation and they will say, why should I listen to you? Who cares? What's in it for me? Make sure that you try to do it in a way that is interesting from them. So I'm trying to do this to a certain extent.
That's such a great vantage point. What's in it for me? Because that's how you get people to really listen and feel like they have skin in the game with the story. Like, if you're talking to the engineering team about your revenue forecast, you should probably pitch it to them in a way where it's like, hey, you're building something that's responsible for 100 million in revenue here. This new feature you added, like, tie it back to what's important to them. What you'd said about the IPO story and leading up to it and preparing for it and studying for it, do you remember what the pillars of that story were? Like, every time I go and pitch this, I have to get like 5 things across.
Yeah. So, you think about what investors care about in the IPO. So there is obviously the kind of the things that, what is the market that you are operating in? Is it big enough market? What is the potential growth rate that you have in the next few years? What about the executive team? Is it a solid executive team? Is it experienced one? When are you going to get into profitability? At the time, it was growth at all cost, but no one spoke about sustainable growth. But have this in mind also to tell them, when do you shift from, company that is investing to grow into it's also coming to the bottom line. And we kind of emphasize things that were unique for us. For example, we're a platform, not a product or a tool. We're not a point solution. How do you differentiate? Because at the time, Asana went public on a direct listing. There was the deal where Salesforce bought Slack, which was also similar in our world. How do you differentiate yourself to these companies and make sure that people notice you differently? We told about the fact that Monday, which is sometimes counterintuitive, it's not a company that sells software. It's a company that sells building blocks that you can build the software of your dreams. So I don't tell you what software to buy. It's a counterintuitive because in the way you take all these pieces of Monday, and if you're running an hotel chain management, and if you're running a construction company or you're an IT company, take the building blocks like a Lego bricks and build a solution. And for people at first said, what do you mean? You sell a software that is doing project management. And we said, no. We give you the building blocks, you drag and drop, and you build what you want. What is the software of your dream? And this was almost, I would say, unique in the way we kind of said it. And it's low code, no code, so you don't have to be a developer. You don't have to customize it. We had a strong financial performance until then, so it kind of complete the story. So we were able to create a differentiation that was so much unique to Monday. With 200 industries across 200 territories and geographies, it's a software that has no limits and fits everyone. Every business out there can use Monday, no matter what you do, from 2 people to 25 people or to 25,000 people. So there was a lot of unique features and functionalities and capabilities in Monday that kind of help us building the story.
Sometimes you just got to give the man the ball and let him cook. That's how the pros do it.
Exactly.
Was there an element of kind of watching game tape, as we call it, because you're doing these over and over again and you probably get certain questions thrown to you? And I think the best CFOs, they think about what questions they're going to ask and then they weave it back into their story. Did you change anything along the way as you had these meetings?
Yeah, of course. So, first of all, when you start the process, we started the process and we looked at other companies that have like similar features.
Characteristics,
yeah, to us. And again, I'm looking at the time, it was Asana, it was Smartsheet. So we kind of looked at what they're emphasizing. And we understood that while they're emphasizing one thing, we need to kind of navigate in a different way or kind of detach ourselves from their story and started going into our story, which is about what I said earlier about the building blocks, to more emphasize the building blocks because this is one area of differentiation. We spoke about the low code, no code. At first, we didn't emphasize it that much, but then we said, okay, it's at the time, like 4 years ago almost, it was something very unique that you don't have to be a developer. You just take it and you build what you want. So this is something that as we continue the roadshows and doing testing the water, we kind of emphasize our ability to build anything that you want. We didn't start with that. We simply started with we're selling a software, but then the story evolved. And I think this is pretty much the things. We gained confidence as well. At first, we didn't know how to tell the story about the fact that we have, at the time, we had 127,000 customers across, as I said, 200 industries. So we didn't know if this is advantage or disadvantage because you're not really focusing on a certain kind of vector, a certain market. You have a lot of potential industries. Is it good thing? We realized it's a good thing. So there was a lot of things that we kind of understood from the reaction of the investors that they are focusing on that because eventually they do the math and they said in 3, 4, 5 years, show me what everything that you do today will provide me with 3x return or 4x return on my investment. So one of the things that we did, which was an exercise, is we said, okay, where we want to be 5 years from now, where we are going to be. We did a plan. We did even do a 10-year plan. Said, okay, we want to be in a I don't know, $100 billion market. We want to have 3,000 people. We want to have 5 products. We want to have strong financial execution. What we need to do today in order to get there. And we kind of did reverse engineering and kind of went backward and started to answer questions that will address where we want to be in 5 years, where we believe we're going to be. So it helped us kind of, shape the story.
That's amazing. And I've heard you say, don't be afraid to be bold. Where and how should you be bold in your storytelling?
So it goes back to my answer earlier. So this is really something that I really want to reemphasize. Stick with your story. Even if people tell you your story is not the playbook that people will buy, and they won't believe it. If you believe in it, if you have conviction that this is the right story, stick with your truth. It's not a cliche, it's something that the founders who build the company knows best why they build the company, what is the pain that they are trying to solve, because many companies, there is a problem out there. You build a company to address this problem or to address this pain. So make sure that you know how to tell the story about this. And, we want to be the go-to solution for all the companies out there with no limits. And we keep saying it. Guys, we have no limits to our software. We can serve any industry. We can serve any business, even small, big, construction, and high tech. So we kept saying that because people may say, no, you cannot be one fit all. You are not jack of all trades. Yes, we are. We can solve any problem out there. We are not a company that is, doing a software for hotel chain management, but we have hotel chain management that are using Monday. We have fleet companies who run trucks who are using Monday. We never thought about building a software to run trucks. So this is something, that we are doing. And our ability to be innovative and try and fail. So being bold is many companies or throughout the way, when you fail, you beat yourself and you say, well, I shouldn't have done it. Why I wasted time. We don't do it. We fail. We move on. We said, okay, didn't work. Let's move on. Let's try something else. So it's flexibility. It's adaptability. It's our ability to scale, without being kind of too hang out on something that is very specific. So maybe it's part of the DNA of the entrepreneurs or the cultural kind of entrepreneurship environment in Israel, but it worked for us.
Benchmarks. You seem like a data-driven guy. How did you rely upon benchmarks to support your valuation or your comp set during this process?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So obviously I went into to see prospectus of other companies. And at the time, if you remember, now we are back to it to a certain extent with Palantir. And potentially, which I think is now, 39 or 40. I saw one of your...
It's close to 40x forward revenue now.
40x was like 4 years ago with, I think Snowflake had like 40, like you had the darlings of the market, the 10, companies that have the most, the highest multiples. So at the time, the benchmark was, okay, guys, what is the acceptable on ARR? And it was, again, growth at all costs. So I think companies went at the valuations of, let's say, between 15 to 20x at the time. So what provided you with these valuations? Your growth rate, your ability to improve on your margins, your ability to generate free cash flow. Many didn't, basically, but if you are close to getting free cash flow positive in the following years, then you get some credit for it. So I think the combination of what would be a decent multiple on your ARR together with, showing that you are improving operational efficiency and, including margins as well as free cash flow, and you are growing in the number of customers that you have. This is something that we took like the 4 key pillars. And then we said, okay, let's look at companies that are in the same ballpark in terms of revenue. They are improving efficiency. What are the multiples? And, and there were a lot of companies that went public at the time. I don't know if you remember, Confluent, Procore, as I said, Asana, Globally. So we kind of tried to understand what industry, how much, for example, Slack got paid by, Salesforce, which was a very high bar at the time, 27 billion, I think, for that. So I would say the benchmark was around 20, by and large, for the top guys. And, we got I think at the time when we went public, if I recall right, we were 319 million in revenue for the year we finished, and we got a benchmark of 20-ish, something like that, multiple in terms of multiple. And I will tell you one more thing: we didn't want to be greedy. So when we did the pricing, and we went public, there was the pricing, when everybody's sitting with you and with the board and with the bankers, and they can tell you can price, let's say, just give an example, $100. But you know what? You can price $120, because on one end, you don't want to leave money on the table if the share price is going too much high. And on the other end, you have less dilution. And we said, you know what, guys, we are building a relationship with the investor for a long term. And yeah, maybe short term, we can get some benefits, but on the longer term, we're going to lose. So let's find a decent place to do the pricing. And we try to balance, and we were offered to do more. And we said, no, we are okay with that. And again, something that's
hard to do.
Very hard to do, because you have a lot of parties that saying, no, you have to, don't do it. But I think it's going to the culture. When I said I don't want to brag over too much about it, or to sound like I'm telling a story that is not real, but I can tell you that throughout the process, transparency and authenticity, from the founders to the executive team, was always present in Monday. And this is something that it's very unique. And, you want to make sure that you build the right relationship, and you want to make sure that the people who buy your shares, they're not going to feel the day after that they were kind of paying too much. So it's a delicate balance of science and art. So this is something that is
not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
A critical part of any company's story, whether it's IPO or just talking day to day, is addressing questions about your competitor set. You play in a massive market, also a highly competitive market. Do you have any tips or frameworks for CFOs out there who may be saying, how do I talk about my competition in a way that, reflects well on my company?
Yeah, first of all, you shouldn't say the name of your competitor. This is one thing. It's like an anecdote, but you don't want to speak about them. You want to speak about your company. How is it different from them? So, for example, emphasize the things in your company that is different from your competition. Why you are unique. Give them credit, because, companies deserve credit to a certain extent. Just be respectful. And be respectful to the companies that work in your space. There are many people doing great job. If they are successful or not, it's not your responsibility, but you have to give them credit for at least they're trying. So, speak about how you're different from them in the product, how you're different from them in your financial performance, in the DNA, in the culture, and why you think over time you will be a winner or one of the winners in the market because of you, because you are dependent on yourself, not because they are doing, right or wrong. It's about you, not about them. So I would say when you focus on yourself as a company, on the company, and you emphasize what's unique for you, this is something that will create the edge. But you have to obviously use strong facts. Like you cannot say my product is, supreme if your product is not good. You have to demonstrate how your product is good by number of customers, by the growth in your revenue, by the industries that you are service. So build a story that will emphasize your qualities and traits and advantages versus the others, and focus on that.
Sage advice right there. So I'm finding you a couple of years after the IPO, and the story doesn't stop, right? You have to continue to evolve it over time. Has anything changed in the way you tell it or the chapters that are included in that story?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things is, when we went public, people say, Monday, what? You're just Excel on steroids. How are you different from, other companies out there in the world of project management? You just have a point solution, and there are other, private names that are doing the same things. It was a crowded market. And we said, guys, we are a platform. We are a work management platform that fits any business out there. And people say, yeah, you just said, we don't know. Show us that you are. And then the story starts to evolve because you demonstrate that you grow efficiently, you execute very well, you continue to grow your revenue and ARR, and you even, we said that by 2025 we're going to be free cash flow and operating profit break even. We did it in 2023, and we already achieved double digits in free cash flow, and even double digits this year were reported with profitability. So people started to listen to Monday, and you can demonstrate that you are doing what you have done. One more thing is that we delivered on our promises. We said we're going to be innovative. We're going to introduce new products. So Monday CRM, Monday Dev, Monday Service that is now on beta. So you gain credit for delivering on your promises and executing on your execution and good execution. So I would say make sure that when you provide your either you are doing an investor day or analyst day, make sure that you know how to quantify and your kind of the things that you are saying, because you are going to be having to explain it later. Make sure that you understand it, that the things that you say today, they will come to you and they will tell you, show me that you have done it. So we were able to demonstrate that we were kind of doing what we said. So these are things that we did. And I think there is always like the number of employees that you have, global offices becoming more global. Now you need to explain that you are outside of Israel, not only in Israel. It used to be 80% in Israel. Now we're 65% in Israel. So the story evolves. You change some of your management team. We just announced that the CRO is leaving, and we are now searching for a CRO. You need to explain. People are nervous. Why your CRO is leaving? What happens? You need to be able to articulate the story. And one very important thing, CJ, which I emphasize always, bring a professional IR person very early in the game. This is so important. We have Byron and Paige who are working with me. Byron joined in September, just 3 months after the IPO. When you speak with private, investors, it's one thing. They favor the CEOs. They're very supportive. They don't always ask you the tough question. When you do the change to a public market, you need to understand that this is a completely different set of investors. Very smart, very capable. They will grill you if you don't give them, the story in the right way. Be authentic with them. Don't try to, sometimes you have to tell hard, you have to deliver hard news. You have to understand that the communication is completely different. So this is something that I would truly emphasize. And the last thing I would say, make sure that you continue to innovate and enhance your infrastructure in terms of automations, in terms of technology stack, in terms of your ability to evolve and be proactive. The way you kind of react to things, not reactive. Don't be surprised and don't surprise them. So this is kind of the way I feel the story is evolving, and I try to stick with it all the time.
What stuck out to me the most and what you're explaining right there, Eliran, is that you qualified and validated the checkpoints along the way that you told them that you were going to reach. So you said, not only did we do what we said we were going to do, we even outperformed that. And that's what gives you long-term confidence and credibility.
Correct. Because when things are becoming more challenging, like macroeconomy became 2 years ago from a very favorable environment, headwinds across the board. You have to manage the expectations. So, and they remember that you were honest with them to a certain extent, and they give you credit for that.
I love that. Well, gearing towards a close, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So you're a successful guy, but I ask every guest on the show, can you give me one thing that you've screwed up in your career? It could be this job or any previous role.
First of all, there were many. I can tell you that in my one of my first jobs as a CFO, the CEO asked me to speak with the lawyer who was working with us, and he was his close friend. And I spoke with him, and the conversation was not going to the right direction in terms of, at the time, I remember kind of the retainer and the service. So I wrote an email to my CEO just detailing what how the conversation went, and I copied the lawyer. I didn't say anything bad about him, but I copied him on the email I sent to my CEO, and I said, I spoke with X. He was a bit, he didn't really understand what I'm trying to tell him. He was a bit aggressive, blah, blah, blah. 2 minutes later, I get a phone call on one hand from my CEO. On the other hand, I get an email from the lawyer. And I said, first of all, I didn't say anything bad about you. I was just detailing the facts. But if you want, let's do like a 3-party conversation. And I was really quick to say, guys, look, happens, but it wasn't like a pleasant moment. We sorted it out. We became good friends, but it wasn't really good.
Wow, that's a good one. Thank you for unpacking that. Next one, if you could tell your younger self, knowing what you know today, some advice, what would it be?
I try to be, I said it earlier, I try to be authentic in a way that, and passionate about what I do. I would say to myself, go with the way you believe things should be done, because I made a lot of mistakes. No one has a career that is always great, but it was always something that I didn't have an agenda. I didn't try to be like smartest. I didn't try to manipulate. I went with my authenticity, and I believed in the things that I've done. So I would say, stick with it. Don't try to change things, even if people tell you that sometimes you have to be a bit more political, sometimes you have to be careful about what you're saying. If you say it in a way that is not disrespectful, sometimes it is, but I don't try to do it, then people will appreciate this. So stick with it, and this is what I tell my kids. Be honest with people.
Yeah, that means a lot to me too. I think I've always been kind of an out-of-the-box CFO in a lot of ways. I mean, you could probably tell from my background. Somebody told me it looked like I was on acid, which isn't the case. But I think you got to be true to yourself. You got to have some personality and just be a human.
Definitely.
Can you walk me through your finance software stack? What tools does your team use to get the job done?
Yeah, so we are now, thanks God, we are going to do on January 1st of 2025. We're moving to NetSuite. We had Priority until now, which is a very good but Israeli software that is very global, but it's, you have to move on. So we're going to have Priority. We have payroll systems, some Israeli, some outside of Israel. I don't know if people are familiar with a company called Trust Me, with a company called CPQ and order management that we're doing. We're doing travel management, Combitas. Again, these are companies that we're using. We are using Salesforce. We have a BI system that we built in Monday, which is, we didn't speak about it, but this is super important for us. We have Doka, we have Mesh, we have Avalara, a lot of companies. I'm a great believer. By the way, one of my, tips you said, try to be as much as possible, implement technology in your financial services as well. I want my team, my FP&A team, to don't be afraid to try new technology systems that may help us at work. I think it's super, super helpful. So, we have a lot of plans for next year. After we implement NetSuite, we onboard NetSuite, we want to make sure that things that are integrated and connected to NetSuite, we want to try them across, many things.
That's great. Last one I got for you. What's the craziest thing you've ever had someone try to expense?
A few things. There were kind of odd things. Like someone went to a place where there was raining and he bought an umbrella for $100.
That's a really expensive umbrella. Wow.
Yeah, and someone, he didn't got his suitcase. He went to Zara. He bought things for $400. The day after, he got the suitcase, whatever. But then his colleague bought a suitcase for $300 and he got the suitcase later. So there was a lot. Many things are about travel. People travel and they have all these things that they do. And, being a CFO and being in finance, one of the most, and anecdotally, you get all these expenses reports and you get all these things that you need to reimburse. And there are some things that are really odd. Like, it's potentially something that is a bit, looks strange, but it's part of life. You need to take it.
Yeah.
You need to apply judgment.
Yeah. And some of them aren't even like against the policy. It's just like odd when you see them. Like I get the automated notifications each day, and we just had a big conference and there was an individual who had like tacos for 5 meals in a row. I'm like, are you okay? Dude, do we have to check on you?
No, I remember working in the US, I got like a toll fee, 50 cents. But I get it. People travel to work. They want to get. So it's completely understood, but it's like 50 cents. The fact that you remember to escort this.
Yeah.
It's like, but I respect this. I always treat it in a respectful way until obviously if there is something really, really strange, then we challenge them. But by and large, we are very flexible on that.
I love it. Eliran, this has been one of my favorite podcasts out of the 120, 130 I've done. I can't thank you enough for sharing your insights.
Thank you so much, CJ. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed, and hopefully we'll hear it and it's going to be okay. I hope I didn't say anything that I shouldn't have said.
You crushed it.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, lol. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.